Chrisean Rock, and Chrisean is officially signing with X-Rumble Fighting Championships to make her boxing debut at X-Rumble Boxing, April 25th at Harrah's, Philadelphia, in Chester, Pennsylvania. We're here with her manager, Kim, and her trainer, Calvin Ford, the legend here at Uptown Boxing.
Yeah, Team Take.
Nobody had Chrisean Rock putting unboxing gloves on their 2026 bingo card. Yet here we are, staring straight into the chaos like it just blinked first. 1 minute the internet is arguing over baby daddy drama and deleted Instagram rants. And the next minute boom, a boxing contract quietly slides across the table like a classified document someone forgot to shred. This isn't a rumor whispered in a comment section or a fake flyer made by bored fans. This is real ink, real money, and a real April fight date that just sent the internet into cardiac arrest. Let's be honest, this revelation hit harder than a surprise Drake diss track at midnight. The same Chrisean Rock whose name trends faster than breaking news alerts is now stepping into a ring where excuses don't matter, emotions don't save you, and cameras catch everything. This isn't reality TV chaos anymore. This is face-to-face consequences with referees and medical staff standing by. And the wildest part, this deal didn't leak loudly. It slipped out quietly. The way real industry moves always do, leaving fans scrambling and critics choking on their own tweets. This makes celebrity boxing look like a kiddie pool, makes influencer fights feel like dress rehearsals, and turns April into a countdown nobody asked for but everybody is now watching. The news didn't crash through the internet like a wrecking ball. It slipped out like a confidential email accidentally forwarded to the wrong group chat. No dramatic announcement, no flashy promo video, no slow-motion gloves hitting pads. Just a quiet confirmation from insiders that Chrisean Rock had signed a legitimate boxing deal and already had an April fight date locked in. That silence was the first red flag that this wasn't a joke. Because when the industry moves quietly, it usually means contracts are signed, money has changed hands, and lawyers have already done the talking. Within minutes, timelines froze. People reread the headline like it was written in a foreign language. Chrisean Rock, boxing, deal? Signed, April debut. The words didn't feel like they belonged in the same sentence. And that confusion alone was enough to make the internet spiral. This wasn't influencer boxing cosplay. This wasn't a pop-up exhibition for clout. This was a sanctioned move. That suggested someone, somewhere, looked at her chaos and decided it was profitable. To understand why this shook people so deeply, you have to understand Chrisean Rock's public reputation. Her name isn't associated with discipline, patience, or restraint. It's associated with volatility, emotional explosions, and moments that feel like they were ripped straight from a reality TV blooper reel. Critics have spent years labeling her out of control, unpredictable, and self-destructive, usually from the comfort of their couches. Now those same traits were being quietly repackaged as potential weapons inside a boxing ring. The leak instantly triggered a second wave of speculation. Who made this happen? Because boxing promoters don't gamble blindly. They calculate risk, the way casinos calculate odds, and someone clearly ran the numbers. They saw her viral reach, her ability to dominate conversation cycles, and the way her name trends without any help. They didn't see a liability. They saw a lightning rod in modern combat sports. Attention isn't just valuable, it's currency. As the story spread, old clips resurfaced like ghosts summoned by algorithmic sorcery. Past physical altercations were replayed frame by frame, not as context, but as evidence. Supporters argued that raw aggression can't be taught and that training can refine instinct. Critics countered that instinct without discipline is just chaos in gloves. And hovering over all of it was the uncomfortable reality that nobody actually knew how this would end. The first reactions were split clean down the middle. Fans celebrated it as a glow-up disguised as violence, framing it as Chrisean finally channeling her energy into something structured. Detractors mocked it as a circus act waiting to embarrass both her and the sport. Boxing purists clutched imaginary pearls, pretending the sport hasn't survived a century of spectacle, scandal, and questionable matchmaking. Everyone suddenly became an expert overnight. What made the situation even more unsettling was how quickly April entered the conversation. This wasn't some vague sometime this year rumor. It was specific, spring, a date circled on calendars that hadn't even been printed yet. That specificity made the jokes feel premature and the skepticism feel risky, because when a date exists, preparation exists, and preparation means this is happening whether people approve or not. Behind the scenes, insiders hinted that this wasn't a spontaneous decision. Training had reportedly been discussed long before the leak. Conversations with coaches, conditioning plans, and media strategy were allegedly in motion weeks earlier. None of it public, none of it teased, which only added to the unease, because public figures usually overshare everything, especially when it benefits their image. The fact that this was kept quiet suggested intent, not impulse. The internet hates nothing more than not being invited to the build-up. People want to watch the journey, not just the destination. This robbed them of that comfort. It dropped them straight into the deep end with no floaties. And when people feel excluded, they get loud. Comments sections filled with predictions, warnings, and thinly veiled prayers for chaos. Then came the sarcasm wave. Jokes comparing this to putting a reality star in the Olympics. Memes suggesting boxing gloves should come with parental supervision. Tweets claiming this made celebrity boxing look like amateur hour. But beneath the jokes was a nervous curiosity nobody wanted to admit, because even the loudest critics were refreshing their feeds for updates. The most telling detail wasn't what people said. It was what Chrisean Rock didn't say. No defensive posts, no emotional breakdowns, no long explanations, just silence. And silence in internet culture is either weakness or confidence. In this case, it felt like the latter. It felt like someone who knew the announcement would speak for itself. Promoters stayed quiet too, letting speculation do the heavy lifting. Every argument fueled engagement. Every hot take widened the audience. This wasn't accidental. This was strategy, because controversy sells better than reassurance ever could. And Chrisean Rock, whether intentionally or not, became the center of a storm that didn't need hype. It created itself. As hours turned into days, the narrative slowly shifted. It stopped being about whether she should box and became about what happens if she does well. That hypothetical alone rattled people, because success would force a rewrite of every dismissive comment ever made about her. It would turn mockery into regret and jokes into receipts. By the end of the first wave, one thing was clear. This wasn't a stunt you forget in a week. This was a ticking clock leading to April. And every second brought more attention, more pressure, and more expectation. Love her or hate her, Chrisean Rock had already won the first round without throwing a single punch. Once the initial shock settled, the situation didn't calm down. It mutated. The conversation stopped being disbelief and turned into obsession. The kind that crawls into every corner of the internet and refuses to leave. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion, a theory, or a source close to the situation. And none of them agreed with each other. That chaos was the fuel. And Chrisean Rock's boxing debut became the match that lit it. Celebrity reactions rolled in like aftershocks from an earthquake. Some were supportive in the safest, most PR-approved way possible, praising her courage and growth while carefully avoiding any actual predictions. Others weren't so subtle. A few threw shade wrapped in fake concern, questioning whether this was healthy or responsible, which in celebrity language usually means, I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to watch anyway. And then there were the ones who laughed openly, treating the announcement like a punchline rather than a headline. The comparisons came fast and reckless. People dragged influencer boxing into the conversation, acting like every celebrity who ever touched a glove was now part of the same story. But that comparison didn't quite stick. Influencer boxing is built on the illusion of danger. This felt different. This felt like a real risk, and risk changes the tone instantly. It's the difference between watching a prank and watching a live wire spark. memes went nuclear. Edits of Chrisean rocking championship bouts flooded timelines. Others showed her in exaggerated training montages, complete with dramatic music and fake commentators. Some were supportive, some were mocking, and some were so unhinged they felt like performance art. But every meme, positive or negative, did the same thing. It kept her name trending. And in the attention economy, visibility is victory. Speculation about her training took on a life of its own. Grainy gem clips were analyzed like ancient artifacts. People argued about her stance, her foot placement, her balance, even when the footage wasn't recent or verifiable. Armchair coaches emerged overnight, breaking down her potential strengths and weaknesses with the confidence of people who have never been punched in the face. It didn't matter. The debate itself became entertainment. Critics began raising the stakes. It wasn't just about whether she could win anymore. It was about what would happen if she lost badly. Would it damage her brand? Would it turn into another viral meltdown? Would it reinforce every negative stereotype people already had about her? Those questions hung heavy in the air because failure in a boxing ring isn't abstract. It's physical, public, and impossible to spin. At the same time, supporters flipped the narrative entirely. They framed this as a redemption arc disguised as combat sports. They argued that boxing requires discipline, consistency, and humility, and that this challenge could force growth in a way nothing else ever had. Whether that belief was optimistic or naive didn't matter. It gave the story another layer, another angle for people to argue about. Public outrage entered the chat next, wearing the mask of morality. People questioned whether promoters were exploiting her image, turning chaos into cash. They demanded to know who would be held responsible if things went wrong. As if boxing has ever been a risk-free environment, the outrage felt selective, conveniently ignoring the long history of dangerous fights that never sparked the same concern. What really escalated everything was the silence from the other side. No opponent announcement, no detailed breakdown of rules, no reassurance, just enough information to confirm the fight was real, and not enough to make anyone comfortable. That lack of clarity became its own storyline. The unknown always scares people more than bad news ever could. Pop culture comparisons reached absurd levels. Some said this was like casting a reality star as the lead in a blockbuster action film without auditions. Others compared it to letting a viral comedian headline a Broadway show. None of the metaphors quite captured it, because boxing isn't performance art. It's consequence. You can't edit it, you can't reshoot it. You live with what happens. As April crept closer in people's minds, the tone shifted again. Jokes started to feel stale. Mockery began to sound nervous, because the closer you get to a real event, the harder it is to treat it like a meme. Reality has a way of humbling everyone equally. And boxing does it faster than most sports. The conversation spilled beyond social media. Podcasts debated it. Commentators speculated about the long-term implications. Some even suggested this could open doors for other controversial figures to step into combat sports, for better or worse. The idea that Chrisean Rock might be the blueprint made purists uneasy, but promoters quietly took notes, and through all of it, she stayed quiet. No clapbacks, no defensive explanations, no performative training selfies. That restraint frustrated people more than anything else. They wanted drama, and she gave them silence. Silence forces people to fill in the blanks themselves, and the internet is very good at that. By the time the dust settled, the narrative had transformed completely. This wasn't just a shocking announcement anymore. It was a cultural moment, a social experiment wrapped in boxing gloves. People weren't asking if they approved, they were asking if they could look away. And the answer, whether they liked it or not, was no. Because when the bell rings in April, all the memes, opinions, and outrage will disappear. What will be left is one person, one opponent, and a moment that can't be undone. And that reality is what made the entire situation feel heavier, louder, and far more serious than anyone expected when the leak first surfaced. By the time the noise reached its peak, it became clear this wasn't just about one fight. It was about what happens after the gloves come off, because in boxing, the real damage isn't always physical. It's reputational, it's psychological, and for someone like Chrisean Rock, whose entire public existence has unfolded under a microscope, the aftermath was always going to be louder than the announcement itself. Win or lose, this decision permanently altered how she would be perceived if she stepped into that ring and held her own. Even briefly, it would force a rewrite of the narrative that's followed her for years. The same critics who dismissed her as reckless would suddenly struggle to explain discipline, training, and courage. Because boxing has a way of exposing effort. You can't fake endurance, you can't edit resilience. You either show up prepared or you don't. But the flip side was just as heavy. A bad loss wouldn't be framed as a sporting defeat. It would be turned into content, dissected endlessly, clipped into slow-motion humiliation, and replayed by people who never cared about her safety to begin with. That's the cruel reality of modern spectacle. Failure doesn't fade, it multiplies, and for someone already defined by controversy, the margin for error feels razor-thin. Promoters understood this better than anyone. That's why the deal mattered. More than the outcome, they weren't just betting on a fight. They were betting on a moment that would ripple outward, affecting endorsements, future opportunities, and the way audiences consume celebrity-driven combat sports. If this worked, it wouldn't just validate the risk, it would encourage more of it. Relationships were bound to feel the impact too. Friends, family, and partners don't just watch from the sidelines when someone steps into a ring. They absorb the stress, the fear, and the scrutiny. Every sparring rumor becomes a concern. Every injury whisper turns into a late-night phone call. Boxing doesn't stay contained in the gym. It leaks into everything. Public perception shifted in subtle ways as the reality set in. People who once laughed began expressing concern. Supporters became protective. Even critics softened their tone, replacing mockery with uneasy curiosity. Because once something becomes real, cruelty stops being entertaining. It becomes uncomfortable. The cultural implications lingered longer than expected. This wasn't just a celebrity trying a new lane. It was a collision between reality TV fame and a sport built on consequences. It forced audiences to confront their own appetite for chaos. Did they want to see growth, or did they just want to see impact? The answer wasn't flattering. What made this moment particularly volatile was that there was no clean ending available. A victory wouldn't erase her past. A loss wouldn't define her future, but both outcomes would be used as ammunition by different sides of the internet. Boxing doesn't settle arguments, it intensifies them. As April approached, the conversation quieted in a strange way. Not because people lost interest, but because anticipation replaced noise. It felt like the calm before a storm that everyone knew was coming but couldn't predict. That silence carried weight. It meant expectations were set, and expectations are dangerous things. No matter how the fight unfolded, one truth remained unavoidable: Chrisean Rock had already crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. She stepped into a space where excuses don't survive and public opinion doesn't matter once the bell rings. That alone demanded respect, even from people who didn't want to give it. The aftermath wouldn't be clean. There would be think pieces, reaction videos, hot takes, and debates that stretched far beyond the final round. Every punch would be reinterpreted as symbolism. Every movement would be analyzed as proof of something bigger. That's the cost of doing something unexpected in a world addicted to predictability. And when the dust finally settled, the question wouldn't be whether this was a good idea. It would be whether anyone else would dare to follow. Because if this gamble pays off, the door swings open. And once that door opens, there's no closing it again. Chrisean Rock didn't just sign a boxing deal. She challenged the way people think about fame, risk, and reinvention. She forced an audience built on judgment to confront the reality of effort. And whether she walks away celebrated or criticized, one thing is already certain: and dislike. That we're standing ringside, waiting for April to hit like a right hook nobody saw coming. Love her, hate her, or pretend you don't care while secretly refreshing for updates, Chrisean Rock just forced the entire internet to pay attention. This isn't reality TV anymore. This isn't social media beef. This is consequences with gloves on, and the bell hasn't even rung yet. Now here's where you come in. Do you think this is a bold reinvention or a dangerous gamble dressed up as hype? Is Chrisean Rock about to shock everyone and flip the narrative? Or is this about to become the most replayed? What were they thinking moment in celebrity? Boxing history, drop your take in the comments and don't hold back. Argue, debate, roast. Just don't sit quietly, because silence doesn't trend. If this story had you locked in. Smash that like button like it owes you money and just dodged your calls. Subscribe like your front row seat depends on it, because around here, scandals don't come with warning labels. They drop fast, they hit hard, and they keep coming whether you're ready or not. And don't forget, this channel lives where chaos meets receipts. We don't do safe takes. We don't do boring coverage. We break down the stories everyone's whispering about and say the parts nobody else wants to touch. When the gloves come off and the headlines start flying, you already know where to be. So stay tuned, stay loud, and stay ready, because this fight isn't just happening in the ring. It's happening in public opinion, in comment sections, and in every hot take that's about to age poorly. April is coming, and when it hits, see, Allie B. Ruckus will be right here when the